Bhavna and Muskan and Sanjay. Vicky, do you have a question? I don't know. Yeah. Hello, Kimti. Okay. Thanks for joining in. Sanjay, Dimple, Sapna, Ria, Devanshi, Akshita, Abdul Kader, Vaibhav, Anshika, Kirti, Nimit. All right, Aditya and Parvez. So let's start. So in the last class, we looked at group discussion. We looked at listening skills. What are listening skills? What are good listening skills? And then we looked at group discussion, which was a group interactive selection process where organizations or companies were looking to evaluate and eliminate candidates based on expected personality traits that included leadership skills, group management, communication skills, reasoning ability, analytical ability, etc. And we looked at the skills for group discussion, right? And then we also looked at the advantages and disadvantages of group discussion. All right. Good afternoon, Shiksha, Sanskar, Anurag, Kushal, and Sagar. All right. So today we are going to do interview. Yeah, so today is the last unit for speaking skills. So far in the speaking skills, we have looked at monologue and dialogue, group discussion, and today we'll be looking at interviews. All right. So let's begin. You can get a interview question, right? You can get a question that is based on an interview, like you have to prepare an interview between two people, like maybe like a journalist who is interviewing a sportsman, or a question like that. Some local celebrity or some local politician or a sportsman has come over to your college for some cultural event, and you are to prepare a set of questions to question him. All right, so that can be a potential question. All right, so let's have a look at what exactly is interview first. All right, so let me just share the screen. All right, so I hope you can see the screen. So let's begin with interview. The speaking skills, Bharti, the last skills. Just a second. All right. So what are interviews? Interview is a conversation which has a purpose and is directed towards its object by the interviewer. The interview is a face-to-face meeting and discussion between two or more people for a specific purpose. All right. So simply, interview is a face-to-face conversation between a discussion between two or more people for a specific purpose, and that specific purpose can be hiring. That specific purpose can be some form of discussion, right? An appraisal. So we have a lot of these interviews that can happen in an organization. The four essential ingredients of an interview are communication. All right, then between two or more parties, one of which is in control with a purpose. So the two parties that are part of an interview, they are there for a reason, and then what is that reason? They'll be communicating on that, out of which one party is in control over the other one, and they have a purpose. And what is the role of interviewing? Why do we use interview as a tool in an organization to facilitate the communication process, right? Selection. First of all, of course, whenever we have interviews, it is as a part of the selection process. It is part of the hiring process to match the right person to the job. Then counseling. For example, whenever we have hired a candidate and we would like to counsel him, we would like to understand his perspective, why he might have done something, and we would like to know if he's okay, or why did he do this, act on it, right? Why did he act on it? So basically, to understand his perspective, maybe give advice to him also, right? Then induction. Once you are selected, all of the candidates of an organization usually undergo an induction process where they are told about they're told about what the organization is, then they're told about what the expectations of their job is, how are they to work on the job, if there's an issue, how it can be raised. So a lot of this introduction to the company workforce, that's the induction process. Then the grievance or the complaint interviews, which include, of course, something has happened in the organization, and one needs to take over this particular complaint, right? So the one who has done something will be called for an interview about why he or she did that, and that entire process may include a hearing interview and an interview which will give a kind of a resolution. All right, so grievance and complaint. Then appraisal, of course, at the end of every year or within 6 months, you have an appraisal interview about how the employee has performed during the period of 6 months or 12 months. And then further, you can get a hike, you can be told what you can do better, anything related to that appraisal. So it's assessing performance and setting targets. Then disciplinary, of course, if there has been an issue in the office again, if there has been some complaint in the office, so disciplinary interviews can be conducted to inform, discuss, and correct the employees, right? If, for example, something has happened and an entire floor of employees has sat down for a protest against the new regulatory changes that were made by the head office, right? So it can lead to disciplinary interviews where people are chosen to talk about their issues, and then they can be informed to discuss, and a correct resolution can be passed. And then, of course, dismissal and termination. If an employee is not putting his or her best in the job, or some issue must have occurred, then you can dismiss or terminate using the tool of an interview. Right. So what are the different roles of an interview? It can either be for selection, counseling, induction, grievance complaint, or appraisal, disciplinary action, or dismissal and termination. So now let's go through the initial contact phase of the interview. Okay, just a second. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Then initial contact. At first interview between two or more people contains potential difficulties. One such problem area is the effect of first impressions. Of course, anyone who is called for an interview gets nervous, right? And of course, and the idea that your first impressions matter can intimidate the person, right? So the first initial contact, the contact that the employee makes with the employer, the potential employer, can be fraught with a lot of difficulties. That how is he going to perceive me? How am I supposed to represent? The other one can also have a different idea that how am I going to represent my organization to this new person, right? So this is the initial contact. Then one of the most effective means of managing this issue is to discuss the accuracy of initial impressions with the individual under consideration, and to allow enough time for the absorption of information beyond that received in the first minutes of contact. The impact of expectations must also be taken into consideration. Unrealistic expectations on the part of you or the interviewee most often lead to disappointment and frustration. Destructive expectations can be avoided if both parties state clearly their agendas and needs. So right at the first contact, nobody should come with presupposed or assumptions about each other, about the organization and about the employee, right? One should go there with an open mind to experience what is there in front of them, and then respond to it accordingly. All right. Then preparing for the interview. Thorough preparation will allow you to conduct a well-structured, smooth-flowing interview that will yield the maximum amount of useful information in the shortest amount of time. The more you know at the outset of the interview, the more useful information can be increased before contact with the interviewee. You should obtain and review all relevant information. So whenever you're going ahead to apply for a position, it is always good to know what the position entails, right? So for example, if you're looking at different advertisements that are posted on professional networking sites, we'll always see what is expected out of the candidate, right? What is his salary? What is his job profile? So read it carefully and try to understand what is it expected out of you if you were to work in an organization. Try and connect it to the skills that you already possess and the skills that you can work on. All right. So this is the preparation that one has to do before going for an interview. Prepare a set of questions that you are well prepared to answer the questions that can be asked to you. Then gather facts. All interviewing requires the interviewer to gather facts prior to the interview, whether it is analyzing the job specification and knowledge, skills and abilities before a selection interview, or investigating and fact finding before an employee complaint. So like we have already discussed, that interview can happen for a variety of reasons: hiring, appraisal, complaint, termination. So for any kind of interview, it is always good to gather all the facts that you have before setting up an interview. For example, if you are going for an appraisal interview where your performance is going to be assessed and the targets will be set for the next quarter, what you can do is you can research the work that the employee has done in the past, and then you can talk to him regarding his performance. If he did well in those months of his employment, then you can of course congratulate him and appreciate it. And if he has not done well, then you can of course point out towards his mistakes and tell him how he can do his work a little better. All right, then of course if there is a complaint interview, then you can gather facts on what has happened, or what led this action to happen in an organization, and then go ahead with the complaint interview. And same goes for hiring as well, that know about what the position is and gather facts related to it, talk to the people who are already working there, etc., to give you a better idea about the position. Then ensure privacy and no interruptions. Pick a place where you will have privacy and make sure you are not interrupted. If you're constantly interrupted, you will lose momentum, and communicate that the interviewee is not important to you. A very, very important a very, very important point in preparing for the interview. If you are going to have an interview, or if you're going to conduct an interview in an organization, you cannot have the interview in the middle of all the hustle and bustle of the organization. You need to sit down somewhere that is quiet, and you need to sit down where you can talk to the candidate one-on-one without getting disturbed. All right, because if you're sitting in a crowded place where there's a lot of hustle and bustle, there's a lot of noise, then you won't be able to pay attention to the answers of the potential employee, and then he or she will also be get distracted, and it would seem that you are not really interested in knowing him a little better. Then allowing adequate time. Make sure in your planning you allow enough time for each interview. Some interviews will take longer than others. To be clear about the purpose, you will have be clear about the purpose, so you will be able to carve out enough time in your schedule. So for example, if you have 20 candidates and the position is of a higher level, then you would obviously need to talk to the potential employees a little more, and that means you have to spread out the interview process over 2 or 3 days minimum, right? And if you have like 1 or 2 candidates that are to be interviewed, then you can have it in a day. So adequate time preparation, setting out time before the interview begins, is a very, very important point, because from personal experience, I am going to tell you that a lot of times it happens that you can feel that you weren't really asked the important questions, and you were just let go because of the paucity of time, right? Because a lot of people were standing outside waiting for their turn, and you were just like, you know what, they just interviewed me for like 2 minutes and that's it. So sometimes, of course, as a candidate, you would feel what's happened, right? So a potential employee shouldn't really feel this. You should be, as an employer or an organization, time should be given to the potential employees so that they can explain better, they can express better, and they can tell what they're feeling about the job and what do they intend to do with it once they are in, right? Then plan your approach. Do your homework, plan your method with your technique in mind, and make room for the unexpected. Develop a list of pre-planned questions that will help you stay on track. So plan your approach, right? Well, how are you going to approach that particular job? How are you going to approach the questions that come your way, right? You need to plan this thing out before applying for the job. Then the points to remember while you're going for an interview, or are going to attend an interview, or you're going to set up an interview. You must try to put forward an attire which is formal, which gives a nice impression about you. And this works both ways, whether it is the employee or whether potential employee or the employer, right? As an organization, you'll be representing your organization as a potential employer, right? So you need to represent the kind of workforce that you're a part of. And on the other hand, if I'm going for an interview, I need to be very sure about what am I wearing, right? And every organization has a different kind of a workforce. It has a different kind of a professional environment, and you need to be dressed for that environment. That is very, very important, right? And mostly it is going to be formal wear. Then it is essential to have the etiquette to wish the people in the interview or the board or panel, and not do anything that would make them feel that you're rude or overconfident or a fool. Go in with confidence and wish them good morning, good afternoon, thank you for interviewing me. to show that you are polite, that you are kind, and that you are considerate towards the elders or towards the people that might hire you, right? Then mostly the questions in an interview are related to your subject or specialization. Therefore, it is a prerequisite that you know your subject well and is able to deliver responses to the questions put forward by the interviewer. So it is always good to know about the subject of yours, about all the details, about all the broad horizons that you might be expected to cover before coming up for an interview, right? So it's always good to know about the details of your subject, about the different papers that you might have studied, about what you can offer with the degree that you have in hand, right? So it is always good to know the subject or the specialization or the skills that you have and have talked about in your resume. Then often interviewers ask you questions about your personal life. It should be answered tactfully without divulging much of your personal information. So a lot of times at the end of each interview, you can be asked personal questions by the interviewer, right? And you need to answer those questions respectfully. And if something irritates you, then you can politely decline to answer those questions too. But you have to remember that because you are in an interview, you have to reply politely and with utmost consideration for the other person. And then questions which are of general nature needs to be answered with confidence. And it is essential as interviewers try to figure out if you are aware about these things about your subject, right? So very, very important. Confidence is really, really necessary. It shows that even though if you know your subject and if you cannot answer well and you're a little hesitant, then it might reflect a kind of nervousness, right? It might reflect a kind of underconfidence or the fact that you don't really know the answers, right? But that shouldn't be the case. Reply everything with confidence and show the interviewer that you know the subject inside and out. All right. Then your communication should show your confidence and conviction in what you speak. So whenever you're speaking, you should be convinced, right? This is what we say conviction. What does it mean? You should be convinced that whatever you're saying, it's the truth. That whatever you're saying, it means something. ऐसा ही नहीं जैसे we say that कि हवाइयाँ उड़ाना वाला thing. No, you don't have to do that. What you have to do is, if you say that I know how to do this, then you should know how to do that. Okay? So reply with confidence, reply with conviction, and prove to the potential employer that yes, I can do this, I know how to do this. All right. Then your non-verbal cues should match your words, and at no time you should show with your gestures or facial expressions that you are getting irritated or bored or aloof to what the interviewers are inquiring about. Moreover, your non-verbal communication should reflect your enthusiasm and interest in the prospective job. Right. So the non-verbal cues, like we have already talked about a lot of times during communication, and this is a very important part of communication theory, that your enthusiasm and interest will only be reflected if you show that excitement in your eyes, in your gestures, right? Make eye contact with the potential employer, show the gestures that you're confident. Do not sit with a hunched posture, right? Do not sit with a nervous posture that, you're underconfident or you don't know how to reply to the questions that have been put across you. So show the confidence, show the enthusiasm, the interest in your posture, your outfit that you are going to wear, your formal dress, your gestures, your eye contact, your facial expressions. Show everything. Just a second, I'm getting a call from the technical team. Hello. You can get to write upon, like I've said, you can be asked questions on interviewing. You can be asked to write an interview. You can also be asked to write a speech. All right. So write a speech on, so and so topic. All right. that you are supposed to write a speech on. Okay, so public speaking is the process of designing and delivering a message to an audience. Effective public speaking involves understanding your audience with your topic and delivering your message skillfully. All right, so public speaking is the process of designing and delivering a message to an audience. So where do we use public speech? Anyone? Kimti, conviction is the idea that you whatever that you're saying it with a certain kind of confidence, right? It should show that you are convinced that what you are speaking is the truth. All right, that is conviction, Kimti. All right, so I've asked. Here's very Yeah. So what was I saying? There's a break in the conversation. What was I saying? Yeah, public speech. Can someone give me examples of public speech? I didn't know that the video was closed. Sorry. Just let me know when it is closed. There must be some error. Yeah. Leader. Yes. Yes. Public speech by a political party. Then. Then. What other examples are there for public speech? Quickly. Dipanshu, you can leave and then maybe rejoin because there's not really an issue over here. Minister speaking rallies, okay. Lectures, very good, okay. Speech in a school function. Yes, concerts, TED Talks, very good. Very good, Chika. School, college, assembly. Occasional day, principal. On a public day, okay. Counseling. Not counseling. Counseling is technically not a public speech, okay. Okay, all right. So let's get back to public speech. Right. So public speech is the process of designing and delivering a message to an audience. Effective public speaking involves, yes, that we have got it. Public speaking is the process of designing and delivering a message to an audience. Effective public speaking involves understanding your audience and speaking goals, choosing elements for the speech that will engage your audience with your subject, with your topic, and delivering your message skillfully. Sir, ये जब PPT share होती है ना, तब जरूरी नहीं है मैं कुछ ऐसा वीडियो कुछ वो नहीं कर रही हूँ और वो क्लियर नहीं होता है PPT. इसलिए जब बच्चे देखना चाहते हैं PPT तो वो बंद रहता है. उन्हीं के लिए ये कि उनका वो क्लियर दिख सके. जब वीडियो बंद होगा तो PPT क्लियर रहती है. Effective public speaking involves understanding your audience and speaking goals, choosing elements for the speech that will engage your audience with your topic, and delivering your message skillfully. Good public speakers understand that they must plan, organize, and revise their material in order to develop an effective speech. This is not particularly surprising, given that communication skills are critical for intellectual development, career trajectory, and civic engagement. So, what is a public speech? Public speech is first and foremost process of designing and delivering a message to an audience, right? So you have an audience in place for the first time, whether it's a public speech or a presentation. Then what is a good public speaker? A good public speaker should have the idea to understand, he needs to plan, organize, and revise his material to give an effective speech. Then this is not particularly surprising given that communication skills are critical for intellectual development, career trajectory, and civic engagement. So this is not the first time that I'm taking the class. So I know what the protocols are, and I know when to switch it on and when to switch it off. And basically, this is what we are teaching right now, theory. So it doesn't really concern my face. So I think the students should focus on the PPT than my face right now. So 4 types of speech delivery. 4 types of speech delivery. We're going to do extemporaneous speeches, we are going to do impromptu speeches, and we're going to do manuscript and memorized speeches. All right, so let's look into it. 4 types of speech delivery. Extemporaneous speeches are speeches that are carefully prepared and practiced by the speaker before the actual speaking time. A speaker will utilize notes or an outline as a guide while they are delivering the speech. The notes or outline will usually include any quotes and sources the speaker wants to cite in the presentation, as well as the order the information in the speech should be delivered in. The speech is delivered as if the speaker is having a conversation with the audience. Since the speaker is not reading the entire speech, the extemporaneous speaker uses the notes as a guide, and the speaker will also be able to respond to the audience. This is most practical type of public speaking, this type, and the type you are most likely to use in real life situation when you might be asked to give a formal presentation. So what we do with extemporaneous speeches is that whenever somebody just calls you on stage to talk about something, that is an extemporaneous speech where you are usually not prepared and you don't have anything to say, right? Okay. Yeah, I know the screen is blurry, but I cannot help it because the technical team wants me to switch on the video. Yeah, so extemporaneous speeches are speeches that are carefully prepared. Yeah, so sorry, I've talked about it already, that extemporaneous speeches include are the ones that you speak without any kind of preparation. All right, and you don't really have any notes. Sorry, I'm just speaking the wrong thing. That's impromptu speeches. I got confused. Sorry, there's so much, I'm getting a lot of messages. So it's just distracting me a little. Yeah, so extemporaneous speeches are speeches that are carefully prepared and practiced by the speaker before actual speaking. So extempos are something that we already used to do in school, remember? And we used to talk about, like a teacher used to say in the assembly, you're going to talk about your country, right? So you will prepare this whole speech that you had. Remember, you used to prepare on speech that you had on my country. My country is India, and there are so many people living here. Then we've got the mountains in Kashmir and this and that. So we used to do a lot of that, remember? And then without that paper that we used to prepare all the points on, we used to go and speak on the stage, right, in the assembly. So that is extemporaneous speech, where you have prepared and organized all of your material beforehand, and maybe you have like an outline too, or something that that can just tell you that this is the points that you need to discuss. And then when you go on stage, or then when you have a presentation or a speech to give, then then you will give that speech without usually looking at all of the material that you have. All right. So since the speaker is not reading the entire speech, the extemporaneous speaker uses the notes as a guide, and the speaker will also be able to respond to the audience. This is the most practical type of public speaking, the type you are most likely to use in a real life situation when you might be asked to give a formal presentation. So, for example, whenever we are asked to give a formal presentation or a presentation or a public speech, or wherever we have been asked to talk about anything publicly, then we always prepare an outline, we always prepare a speech with us, right? But whenever we are delivering that speech, we usually do not read line to line. Rather, we just look at the words that we remember and then we try to piece them together, or the outline that we keep in mind, right? So that is extemporaneous speeches. I hope you understood what they mean. Then impromptu speeches. This is what I was confusing. I'm sorry because of the messaging and all of that. The impromptu speeches are the speeches that we usually do not plan, right? For example, if you are in a farewell, right? In a farewell, and a lot of times students speak, what they have felt being in school or being in college or whatever, and they speak right from their heart, right? At a marriage also, at a wedding, sorry, not a marriage, at a wedding. So you always give these wedding toasts and all of that, and they are impromptu speeches. They are speeches that you prepared right there on the moment with, all of the memories that you already have. So any speech that is that is delivered without notes or a plan or any kind of any kind of formal preparation, and a spontaneous delivered are called impromptu speeches. And this is one of the most nerve-wracking situations, because there isn't a plan or agenda to follow, and they just have to get up and speak without any thinking time. And it also happens, so it can be both be intimidating, it can be also what should I say? It can be spontaneous and fun. But for some people who are not really that good of a public speakers, then they're not good public speakers, then they definitely can feel a little, worried, scared, intimidated by the situation, right? So the reality is that this is the type of public speaking you are the most prepared for. Your daily life is filled with impromptu experiences and conversations. Every phone conversation exchange between you and a loved one and discussion amongst friends is impromptu, but by its very nature, even if you practice your conversations, they're still impromptu in the delivery. So in a way, we are definitely used to speaking impromptu because we are usually interacting with our parents, we're usually interacting with the siblings, our friends, our teachers, everyone that we meet in real life, right? But specifically, if we are told on the spot, like maybe like a manager or maybe by a teacher to, just come up in front of your class and speak on this particular topic, then we might feel a little uncomfortable. Then we might feel a little, what should I talk about, right? I really don't remember anything, right? So that is impromptu speeches. Okay, when there is no formal planning done in beforehand, the speech is prepared. Sorry, before the delivery of the speech. Then we have manuscript speeches. Manuscript speeches are delivered with the script of the exact words to be said. If the person has to give a speech, he would prefer to have every single word in front of him so that he can basically read the speech to the audience. While this is very reassuring for a speaker, as he may feel like he won't forget anything if they have every word in front of them. Manuscript speaking is one of the worst traps to fall into for a speaker. A speaker who utilizes complete manuscript will often spend more time looking at the script than at the audience. By doing this, the speaker is unable to react to the audience or respond to the audience members' questions. Therefore, the manuscript therefore the manuscript becomes a trap for the speaker. And this, I'm sure you must have noticed this a lot whenever a lot of political leaders do that. A lot of political leaders have prepared manuscripts whenever they're going to different constituencies, and that is how that their speech is molded to appeal to the people where they are giving the speech. And sometimes it happens that their speech that they have prepared, or someone else has prepared for them, may not connect to the people that they are delivering a speech to. But because they are so bound by that manuscript, it happens that they just keep on talking about it. They give on giving their speech, and the other people get a little like, what is he saying? So it happens like that a lot, right? Because if you are completely bound by whatever the words are there in front of you, then you might commit a few mistakes that you might not be able to connect with the audience to. So manuscript speeches are speeches that are scripts that where you are using the exact words that are there in front of you. And even remember, like I'm sure you know that a news reporter reads word to word what is there in front of him, right? So similarly, a lot of others also do that. So for example, if you go to certain press conferences after something has occurred, so they have been told to speak word to word certain things, and it may or may not connect, it may not even look true, right? But they use certain scripts to perform that act of speech delivery. Right? Then memorized speeches. Memorized speeches are speeches that are committed to memory. The speaker completely memorizes the text of a speech and then delivers the speech from memory without reliance on notes or an outline. This is a very fearful speaking situation for most people because they fear they will forget what they had planned on saying when they get in front of the group. And they might make a fool of themselves in front of the audience if they forget what to say. This type of speaking is not very common to daily living unless you are in a profession like acting. Most of us memorize very little in our daily lives. So when we were young, remember I gave you an example of we were to speak about our country, and sometimes it used to happen that we were selected for some reason, for some cultural event or some sports event where we were to invite the principal, or we were to give some kind of welcome address or something to the guest of honor or something, right? So at that time, our teacher used to give us a proper speech where we used to remember each and every word, and where we couldn't miss out any word, right? So those memorized speeches were given, right? And those speeches were the most difficult speeches ever because it was a really hard time remembering those words, remember? So memorized speeches, it doesn't come naturally to us because we are not used to speaking like that in real life. We cannot memorize everything and then speak out in a very, friendly fashion, or we cannot speak out in a fashion that shows that it is, it's very friendly or it is quite comforting. No, right? So memorized speeches sometimes look forced, they look stern, they look like, we are being intimidated by something around us, right? So that is memorized speeches. Then vocal aspects of speech delivery. Second. Now, vocal aspects of speech delivery, pitch, of course. You have already discussed this. Remember when we were doing paralanguage, we were doing all of these things when we studied, I think, the unit 2, if I'm not wrong, unit 2, right? So what are the vocal aspects of speech delivery? Pitch is the highness or lowness of a speaker's voice. It is the natural upward and downward movement that happens when we speak. So pitch is like, of course, like I'm saying that, I'm using one particular speech. Just a second. There you go. Yeah. So pitch, the shriller you are or the higher the pitch that you use, it shows that, that you may be uncomfortable, or the lower the speech that you use, it might show that you're nervous or you're underconfident, right? So pitch is the highness or lowness of a speaker's voice. It is the natural upward and downward movement that happens when we speak. Rate is how fast or slow you speak when delivering a speech. A common problem of nervous public speakers is speaking too quickly or feeling like you are rushing through a speech, which can lead to a cotton mouth feeling. To counteract rushing the presentation, have a bottle of water on hand and take a drink when you feel like you're rushing. This should slow you down. Likewise, concentrating too much on slowing down can cause you to drag your presentation. Try to speak at the natural rate when you're delivering a presentation. So we speak a lot faster when we want things to get over quickly. We speak a lot faster when we are nervous, right? We want it to end, and we speak a lot faster for a variety of reasons. And on the other hand, we also speak quite slowly for a variety of reasons. So you need to make a careful balance between fast and slow rate of delivery, right? You should be very careful about what is being understood doesn't sound boring, and what is being delivered doesn't sound that, you are quite nervous that you're speaking so quickly. And this is what happens probably in Viva, whenever a question is asked to you, you speak so fast that by the time the teacher, just opens the register to mark you, you've already spoken whatever you had to say, right? Then pauses are intended silences during a speech. In conversation, we naturally pause at the end of sentences and at the end of a thought. We should keep up the same pausing problem in our public speaking that we use in our natural conversation. We can also use pauses to control an audience that might not be paying attention to the presentation by taking a little bit longer pause than normal. An audience member will notice the silence and usually stop chatting, whispering, or being disrespectful. So whenever we're delivering a speech, we have to make sure that our audience is understanding what we are saying. So there are certain pauses, there are these intended silences where we can where we take to understand if the audience has understood what we are saying or not, right? So I'll rest and then I'll see if the audience have understood what I'm saying or not, right? And then the audience goes like, maybe they'll probably nod, or they'll probably clap or do something to show that yes, they are with you, right, as a speaker. So you can take pauses and those silences to emphasize something, to understand the reaction of the audience to maybe rest also. All right, then volume is the relative loudness of your voice as you deliver a presentation. It shouldn't come as much of a surprise that you need to match your volume to the size of the room you are speaking in. You should also pay attention to your audience. Audience members are great about telling you when they can't hear. They will tend to lean forward to look around confused. If you're too quiet, they might even make verbal comments like, what did he say? Can you hear me? When you see or hear this happening in the audience, speak louder. So of course you can read gestures. If you're speaking really slowly, if sometimes the mic is not working and the audience will react to, with hand gestures or with touching the ear, they cannot really hear what you're speaking. And of course your volume is going to depend on the size of the room that you're addressing, right? Like right now, all of us are sitting in our own rooms. We're probably sitting in dining rooms, bedrooms, or probably on a sofa or on the balcony, right? And if we were to speak, we'll speak with a particular volume, right? We cannot scream because it's our home after all, right? We cannot scream or we cannot speak very loudly because we know that we are all in smaller rooms, or we are in our home where there are people too. There are probably our parents are working, our father's working, our brother's working, our sister's working. So a lot of these things are happening. So our volume is going to be normalized according to the room that we are in or to the space that we are speaking in. And similarly, if we were to have a physical class right now in the classroom, then our classes are quite big as well. I'm sure you must have seen. So then I would have been speaking loudly. I would have probably gotten a mic to speak to all of you, right? So that way, of course, our volume is going to change about by the space that we are addressing in. Is it big or is it small? Then enunciation. What does enunciation mean? Enunciation is the pronunciation and articulation of words in your speech. That every word that we speak, it should be properly enunciated, right? It should be properly spoken or uttered. That every sound comes out of our mouth, because sometimes we'll go, we want to do this. So we say something like that, and that doesn't make sense, right? You may understand what the person has to say, but you're not enunciating the words clearly, right? So enunciation is when you speak every word with very with clarity, that every word sounds different and every word sounds full, right? For example, the best is, of course, Shashi Tharoor. If you hear him speak, he speaks very slowly and he speaks very calmly, and every word is very clear to our ears, right? So enunciation, the process and articulation of words in your speech. Each word is composed of syllables, which are the little parts of each speech that combine together to make the particular sound. When we don't pronounce each syllable in a word, we sound mush-mouthed and don't sound clear to an audience. As you give a presentation, concentrate on speaking very clearly and using your entire mouth to form each word. In public speaking, it is essential to use your entire mouth, speaking extremely clearly while making sure you can speak each syllable. So every syllable should be emphasized. It should be spoken, right? So that you will understand the words that are being uttered by the speaker. Then fluency is the smoothness of your vocal delivery. Fluency is the flow of your words in the delivery of your speech. You should strive for a smooth delivery in your presentation. We all stumble over unfamiliar or new words, or even old words we have said 1,000 times. The trick is not to make a big deal out of the flub when it happens. Just maintain your professional tone and keep going. The biggest way to prevent stumbling over your words is to practice your presentation or your words, so your words are natural sounding to you as possible. But it happens a lot. No matter how much you practice, there are words that when you are delivering a speech, you might get distracted and you say something that makes no sense, or then you jumble up words. So it happens a lot. It's absolutely natural and human, because we are prone to making mistakes, right? And as a teacher too, I can say that a lot of times I I end up I end up mispronouncing words, right? I end up flubbing the lines and all of that, because sometimes the fact that we are delivering a message on the on this on the screen can be a little problematic, right? So yeah. Okay, so because there is a little paucity of time today, we won't be doing the last this topic, that is bodily aspects of speech delivery, and I'll continue this in the next class. All right, so today what did we look at? We looked at interviews. We looked at the interview process. And what is the interview? Interview is a face-to-face meeting and discussion between two or more people for a specific purpose, and the four ingredients are communication between two or more people, one of which is in control and with a purpose. And that purpose can be selection, counseling, induction, grievance, a complaint, appraisal, disciplinary action, or dismissal or termination. And the important points are the initial contact, the preparation for the interview, and of course the other points that you need to be well dressed. You need to be very sure about the specialization of your skill set. You need to answer with confidence and conviction, and you should show enthusiasm and interest and answer tactfully to the questions that are put forward, right? And Anuradha, let me just see, just a second. Anuradha, I can't open. Yeah, wait. Okay, this is the paper. So you can, so someone shared the paper with me and you've got questions like this. The passage above is a public speech in Malala made at the United Nations. She has a very specific style of speaking. After listening to her, you are inspired to make a public speech of your own to a group of young girls to speak up for their rights. Write a public speech in which you are addressing the issue of women fighting for their rights, especially the right of education. And the other question is write a dialogue between Malala and the attacker. All right, yeah. So because you're English A students, you can get questions like this. And this is the English paper. Someone has shared. Wait, let me just share it with you. Just a second. Yeah, so I've said that, the speech can come. And for this, of course, you need to, read as much as you can. That's what I'm going to say. Read as much as you can from your, you probably have school guides to, not guides, what am I saying? You in school, remember, we used to have this grammar books. Used to have a lot of grammar books and everything. Both CBS and ISC used to have different grammar books. Go back to those books. Those are the best books. Really, they're going to help you a lot. Watch a lot of TED Talks. Watch a lot of speeches that are there on YouTube. They are really going to help you with this particular, question. Extemporaneous speeches, Iram, is when you have prepared an outline where you have already planned about what you're going to speak. Okay, and then you come and give that speech, maybe just using the outline, right? You're not going to read from the speech directly, right? Read from the material, but you're just going to use it as some kind of a guide. Okay, that's extemporaneous speeches. Anuradha, I've shared this. I don't know. I think you only shared this YouTube link. Aftab, it can be those scripted speeches as well. They can be extemporaneous speeches as well. So extemporaneous speeches and manuscript speeches. So what is the Aftab is asking, what do our leaders and politicians give? So sometimes they have like a proper script, right? And so that can be those manuscripted speeches as well. But sometimes, some are really good, like I've said, Shashi Tharoor and all, and they can give extemporaneous speeches where they already have an outline in place, right? They already have an outline in place and they just look at, those important words, ki ab ye baat karna, ab ye wala baat karna hai, right? So it can be extemporaneous speeches or it can be manuscript speeches. Writing section mein, Harmeet, that's what I'm saying. Writing section mein, you can get a dialogue writing, you can get speech, and don't get confused by speech. Just think about it like, we used to write a lot of essays about, these topics like right to education, right? We used to talk about a lot of this signs a moon or a bane, questions like that. So that is similar, but now you just have to think that, you're probably facing the audience and speaking that, delivering a speech. So that is what, don't worry, we'll discuss it later. We'll do resume later. Vicky? Khushi, read as much as you can and watch a lot of videos. I have no information regarding the assignments out there. Okay, so the entire syllabus is available on the SOL website, Rishabh. You can have a look at that. Iram, the SOL material is there on the website. The rest I will provide once the classes get over. I'll provide it in the group. So don't worry. The SOL material is there on website that can be downloaded right now. All right. So I will take a leave and I will see you today's Thursday. I think Saturday. When is the next class? It is Saturday only. All right. So I'll see you in the next class then. Okay. Bye-bye.